So yes, I've been in Washington covering national security issues and legal policy issues since 2003. I sort of rode the wave in on uh, Abu Ghraib and the attempt by Senator McCain to impose a ban on torture and the signing statements by Bush that came out of that, as well as the revelations about warrantless wiretapping by my future colleagues at the New York Times. I was then at the Boston Globe. And this was, and eventually became a specialist in this layer of what the government has been doing, the sort of continuing dilemmas and legal fights over executive power, national security, individual rights after 9/11. And you may remember in January of 2009, when President Obama was inaugurated, there was this moment in which it looked like the war on terror was suddenly, abruptly over. He had, of course, run on a platform of change from George Bush's global war on terrorism. He'd been a big critic on the campaign trail of how the government had conducted itself in the years after 9/11. In his inaugural address, he talked about the, getting away from the sense that there had to be a trade-off between constitutional ideals and security. And among the first things he did was issue a series of executive orders promising less secrecy, closing CIA black site prisons, banning torture, ordering Guantanamo closed. And it really looked like it was over. And this thing that I had become a specialist in, and a couple of colleagues of mine, like Scott Shane, Mark Mazzetti, and so forth at the Times, did for a living, was no longer going to be available. And I remember joking to Scott, I think it was, that we were going to have to find new jobs. Maybe there was an opening in the sports department, and we could, keep paying the rent somehow. But very quickly, it became apparent to me that it was not over, that there was going to be much greater continuity in the counterterrorism policies of the new administration with the old one than the expectations created by then Senator Obama's campaign rhetoric. Some of his incoming cabinet members, in sort of little noticed remarks during their confirmation testimony, had affirmed that, in fact, they thought it was lawful for the government to hold terrorism suspects without trial under the laws of war, that they were going to continue the practice of rendition, transferring people to other countries from one intelligence agency to the next, based only on diplomatic assurances that there would not be mistreatment, which was exactly Bush's policy, at least on paper, as well. They shut down temporarily military commissions, but they'd done so in a way that looked like they were keeping the door open to resuming them, which is, of course, exactly what happened. They were stirring the state secrets privilege in court to continue blocking lawsuits about torture and surveillance that they had inherited from the Bush administration. And all that was sort of apparent by 2 or 3 weeks into the new administration. And so I called up the new White House and said I was planning on writing a story about this surprising emerging continuity. And one difference between the old administration and the new one was the Obama administration wanted to, or at least was willing to, engage with me. When I would call the Bush administration and say, hey, I'm going to write a story about this signing statement that says you can torture notwithstanding the anti-torture law, they would kind of blow me off. This new administration called me into the White House, and I went in and I talked to Greg Craig, who was Obama's first White House counsel, in his office. And we went through this sort of litany of things that weren't changing. And he explained that they were not going to have a shoot from the hip, bumper sticker slogan, abrupt changes to government policies. They were going to look carefully at everything they had inherited and move deliberately. And that involved going out to Langley and to the Pentagon and so forth, even during the transition, and getting briefed by the members of the permanent national security establishment, the sort of subject of Michael's book about what the programs were, why they were necessary, why they'd been put in place, what they were doing, what revoking them would entail. And he argued that this, whether it was civil liberties people on the left or the right in a place like this who were upset by that, or it was Bush administration veterans who were seeming, claiming vindication by that both sides were wrong, they were charting their own course, and people should just give them time to let this work out.